Hello, everybody. I think it's not so many that follows us today, but I hope that some of you will see the film later. My name is Helen Jonsson Christie. I'm a clinical psychologist. I should have started by saying Eid Mubarak to you all. I'm, as I said, a clinical psychologist. I have worked with sexually abused women and also with children since 1984. I'm a rather old lady. And I've also worked quite a lot with war-affected children and families here in Norway, but also in war areas like in Gaza, like in northern Iraq, and I also joined this Health and Human Rights Info to Jordan. So I hope I have some experience that might be useful for you. Today, this is the 4th session, and it's not on one place in the manual. It's actually both on page 18, on page 70 to 74, on page 76 to 101, and on page 152 to 156. So I hope you will be able to follow this lecture. The lecture is called Stabilization, and I'll try to explain both the concept and also the reason why. Why do we talk about it? But first, I would like to add something that's not in the manual. Sometimes when we speak about stabilization, we speak about two kinds of stabilization. We speak about macro stabilization and micro stabilization. Macro stabilization is that for traumatized people, predictability, rhythm, rituals, structure during the day is an important stabilization factor. For children, we all sometimes talk about a model called STOP, where the S stands for structure, the T stands for having the opportunity to talk to someone, the O stands for organized play, and for adults you could also say organized activities, and the P stands for parental support. We are not going to talk so much about the macro stabilization here now, but I just wanted to remind you about it, because I think having a structure during a day, having something that's happening each day, a rhythm, is very much important. And sometimes when we do groups with the traumatized women, we also use rituals when they come, rituals when they go. We say today is the 14th of September. It's like this outside, the weather. Here in the room I can be safe. Everybody here is here for me. And I'll take what is helpful for me, and I'll leave whatever I don't find helpful. And then in the end we say about the same. We remind of the date, of the weather outside, how it looks outside, and we say something about I'll use what I find helpful, and I'll leave what I don't find helpful, and I do it as best as I can. And for many, these rituals in the start, rituals in the end, is very helpful, because they always seem to blame themselves sometimes for what they have done or said in the group, and then the sentence comes up and they say, well, I do as best as I can. So macro stabilization is important, but micro stabilization, as we use it in these manuals with the toolbox, with what you can do in individual sessions, is also what we call micro stabilization, and is also important. In some textbooks, the authors stress that sometimes for a person, the trauma reactions themselves can be as scary as the traumatic event, because they feel, who am I? I don't feel like the same person. Am I crazy? Why am I so changed? I didn't used to be so jumpy. I didn't used to be so easily startled, or so easily angry, and so easily scared as I am now. I didn't used to be a person with a lot of mood swings, as I have now. Is something wrong in my head? So these reactions of trauma is sometimes as scary as the traumatic event itself. So that's why psychoeducation and education about the effects of trauma helps the survivor better to understand their own stress, that it is normal reaction to abnormal situations, and they have been exposed to violence, and they seem to need to know the explanations why I reacted this way, and they also need to learn some good coping strategies to get control over these responses. As Nora said in the second session, when she talked about the good helper, she said many of them will never tell actually what happened. And we have to respect that and respect their need of borders. But they will ask for your help for their reactions. Even if you don't know what actually happened to them, you can help them by giving them these tools of stabilization. It's important in order to be able to concentrate, to learn new things, that they are present in the here and now situation. That is what is meant by being stable. Some traumatized survivors can go from being stable to unstable during your meeting with them, and need to be stabilized before we can start or continue talking. They can come into your office being so scared and so numb that you don't even get in contact with them. So you have to learn some tools in order to help them to relax. Yeah. So we all use a toolbox when we work. And with your knowledge and your experience that you already have, then you probably have many tools that you use through your work. But remember that you, the helper, are the most important tool. To be able to relate to you and and that you are regulated, that you are stable, that you are you have sometimes also to do these exercises in order for you yourself to be regulated, not being too overwhelmed, and by you being there, you are what we call a co-regulator. You help the person to regulate themselves. Traumatic experience is, as Doris talked about last time in session 3, it's often characterized as a moment of total helplessness. It's a moment of powerlessness, and we could also call it a moment of disempowerment. That's why empowering the trauma survivors is so important. Can I ask now if this is clear, if you are following me? This idea about empowering is so important because Helplessness is actually the last thing they need to feel, and sitting there asking for help from you can be a sort of trigger into the deep helplessness feeling that they really want to avoid, and which actually should be avoided, and also, but they should be given skills so that they can feel more empowered. Then they feel more in control and less frightened. Since I also work with children, I often say to children that I know that what you prefer is to forget, and don't think about it, don't talk about it, not ever touch it, what happened. But I also know that sometimes you are not able to control. The pictures come back, the memories come back. My assistance is to try to help you get more control of when to remember and when to put it aside. So stabilization skills is this kind of control and empowerment. Stabilize the survivor. We need to help her to connect with her senses. This will help the survivor to manage danger and fear. Some authors in the trauma literature also call traumatic reactions for kind of time disorder. The past is invading, is awakened by triggers, and the past is there instead of the present time. And also that the future and the worries for the future are seem to be there more or less all the time. So it's very narrow space for the present time. So what we like to do is to help you, to help the survivor to be more in the here and now. And we have to help, what usually helps us be in the present time, to be here and now, is our senses. The touching, the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting. And sometimes when I run groups, I use actually to have something that they can smell, something that they can put in their mouth, or just a glass of cold water like this. Then they get a new sensation. It helps them be here and now. And so we focus on what happens in your body, in your senses, but we also focus upon being aware of what is happening in your thinking, and what's happening with your breathing, what's happening in your feelings, and what's happening in your heart. Who do you long for? Who do you care for? Etc. So if you take a moment that to scan the 5 focuses areas before and after using stabilization tool to notice the difference. Because to recognize these 5 areas is the first step for you to have some influence upon them and being able to change. So recognition of the bodily feeling, the feelings inside of you. I'm a bit angry, I'm a bit scared. The thoughts, I have pessimistic thoughts about the future, or my breathing is very shallow, and I'm always longing for those I've lost. For instance, could be a sort of recognition of these 5 areas. So let's use 2 or 3 minutes now to write down some of what you use as tools to stabilize. Is it psychoeducation? Is it massage? Is it relaxation exercises? Or perhaps you have some quite other tools to help a person stabilize. Could you write down for yourself some of the tools that you use in your daily work? Think of different situations where you will use different tools. One tool doesn't fit in all situations. In some situations you have to choose different tools. And also, as you know, in all cultures, we must adapt to what we do in our culture. And since every person is unique, we need to make the tools and exercises as helpful as possible by adapting them to the needs of each survivor. So with one survivor, you can try different tools, and then you can listen to what they report back as helpful for them. So please write on the, yoga breathing. Yes, that's very interesting and very, very helpful. Drawing on white papers. Drawing is a very good, and listening to relaxing music to calm down. Relaxation sessions, yes. Writing down the future wishes is very important. Sometimes we say that the future, your thoughts and hopes for the future is as important for your present time as the past is. Then we have listened to music, slowly breathing again. So I figure that you already know a lot of what we are going to talk about now, because you seem to already use some of the tools, naming their most important persons and how to make them happy. So reminding them of important relationships. Yes, very, very important. Sport activities, exercise is sport. It's a good coping strategy. Talking with lovely persons is also nice. Yes, thank you for your comments. Nice. We are going to talk about a metaphor, actually, that we call the window of tolerance. But first I will remind you of what you talked about with Doris, about what some of us call the three-unit brain, that we have an old brain, we have a mid-brain, and we have a new brain. And in the old brain is the survival brain, the mid-brain is the feeling brain, the limbic system, and the new brain is the thinking brain, the cortex, and especially prefrontal cortex. I know Doris talked about this. An author called Bruce Perry has also added to this model that we first have to address the old brain in order for helping people to regulate. Some, and I see it especially in children, sometimes you can't even relate because they are so dysregulated that you have to help them regulate their feelings, their emotions, sometimes also their bodily experiences. I know children who have been exposed to trauma for such a long time, to violence, to neglect, that they don't even manage to feel whether they are cold and freezing or warm and should take off their clothes, or if they are hungry, or if they are not hungry anymore, if they are sleepy or not. This really don't seem to be able to regulate their own physical states. So regulation is it's the first thing that we have to do. And sometimes, as I said when I talked about macro stabilization, this is all we can do in the beginning to stabilize in the structure around the person. Then comes the relation to the good helper. And so through regulation and through relating, we can start also on the reflecting part of the work. You can Google this concept, the 3-unit brain, and on YouTube, and you will find good explanations and good demonstrations of what happens. But let's go to the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is both a tool, it's an explanation of the trauma reactions, but it's also a tool that we use directly with the survivors. We use it to explain what happens. It is meant to, if you look on the horizontal line, it's the timeline, and the vertical line is the degree in which we are activated in our sympathetic nerve system. You know, if you go back to Doris's lesson and about the fight and flight and freeze and playing dead positions that we have experienced during a traumatic event, it is also a description of how the sympathetic nerve system reacts. When we are in the fight and flight position, we are highly hyper-aroused or hyper-activated. All the blood goes to the big muscles in order for us to fight or flight. Our breathing is short and shallow. Our heart is beating very fast. And we have a very focused attention, a very narrow but focused attention. We don't notice irrelevant elements in the surroundings. And if fight or flight doesn't help or isn't possible for the person, they go down to hypo-aroused. They are flat. They are unable to think clearly. They can't focus their attention. They sometimes seem numb and distant. And sometimes we call it also dissociation. They are not here. They are somewhere else in their mind. And they could seem to collapse. So this is, we all can be over hypo-aroused. If we are very triggered, if we are very provoked, we can be very angry, or we can be very scared, and then we are above our window of tolerance. And we can be flat, depressed, and be under the what we call the window, the area where we can. The window of tolerance is the area where we can. It's the optimal arousal zone where we are able to learn new things, to take in what's new around us, to function well together with other people and studying, etc. So all of us varies within our window, and sometimes we are outside the windows, either up or down. sometimes when we have had too little sleep or when our blood sugar is too low, we react that we find out that we perhaps become more easily angry, more easily irritated, more worried, and we can know that now I have to regulate myself down. I have to calm myself down. I have to find a way, as you already have mentioned, I have to sit down, listen to music, do a relaxation exercise, for instance, or I have to walk or run to find to be able to regulate myself down or to regulate myself up, because now I've been so passive, so numb, so long. So we all vary within this window of tolerance. But for traumatized people, their window of tolerance seems very narrow, and they don't seem to be able to regulate themselves when they are out of the window. So we have, it's three things that trauma survivors must learn. It's to regulate, it's to recognize when they are outside the window of tolerance, and to regulate down or to regulate up, and also during time to be able to expand the windows of tolerance. I have worked with many trauma survivors, and I have been surprised sometimes, because being a bit scared leads into panic very quickly, and a bit frustrated leads into aggression or sadness very deep. So to expand the window of tolerance so that they can be able to contain difficult feelings is also one of the things we have to help them with. So to recognize if the heart is beating louder and faster, and that we feel that our attention is very narrow, for instance, could be very important signals. So I asked you before what kind of tools you use, but it's also interesting to see what do you know helps yourself if you get out of your windows of tolerance. If you get scared or angry or agitated or very stressed, do you use the same tools for yourself? Do you use exercise, relaxation, music, drawing, seeing important good relationships, etc.? And what helps you when you are depressed, when you are low in your activation and perhaps below the limit of window of tolerance? Feel free to write your comments. And also feel free to ask questions about this concept, because it's a bit difficult to grasp, but it's an important metaphor. And you can also Google this, because it's a lot of window of tolerance stuff on the YouTube. It is a model of coping strategies that is called basic PH, where the B stands for belief system, which means that a lot of people have help in activating their belief system. It can be a political view, or it can be religious, being praying, for instance. The A stands for affects, that you have someone you can show your feelings towards, someone that can share your feelings, and somehow you can express your feelings during, for instance, drawing. The S stands for social support, that you have some people like some of you say, seeking supporting friend. The I stands for imagination or creativity. I think that listening to music and drawings and etc. is in the I. And the C stands for cognition, that you learn as much as you can about what happened now. PH stands for all kind of physical activity. It could be relaxation exercises, or it could be jogging. Drinking coffee is not always recommended because it makes your heart beat faster. But perhaps when you are low in your window of tolerance, drinking coffee could be a good thing. But if you are very high in the window of tolerance, drinking coffee can make your heart beat even faster and your breathing goes even faster. Chewing gum. Yes, perhaps that's also something that draws your attention to the here and now, the senses, tasting and movements. We use this with trauma survivors also in order to have a common language. We can ask them, can you recognize where you are in your window of tolerance at the moment? Can you recognize in your body, in your breathing, in your feelings, in your thinking, in your heart, where you are in the window of tolerance? So as I said before, recognition is the first step to be able to influence. When you think of survivors you meet and you work with, do you think you can recognize which of them, or sometimes when they are below the window of tolerance, and sometimes when they are above and when they are below their window of tolerance? Can you describe any situations that you have experienced where this concept could be useful to think of? Sometimes I see in the group I run that they are not listening. I can see it in their eyes that they are somewhere else, and they seem numb. They seem below the window of tolerance, and we need to, and sometimes we do simple things like standing up, breathing together, going to the window, look out, and in order to bring them back. And sometimes you see the opposite, that they get so nervous and full of feelings. And then we also have to make a stop in the session and say, can you sit back and feel the ground under your feet? Can you feel the support in the chair? Can you feel your breathing? And we do what we call a scanning of the body. Yeah. Survivor was numbed, talking about the need of diapers. Though explaining for the fourth time the measurement and to distribute. Yeah. So the survivor was not in concentration about what was actually happening. Is that yeah, she was addressing me but not able to focus on anything or on my face. That's very, very common, and it's important to try to bring the person back. Sometimes I also ask permission to touch the hand or the arm, or to see that you are here and I am here. Yeah. Yeah. So being able to help her regulate herself I don't really know if I can see from what you write whether she was below her window of tolerance or whether she was highly activated. She was below. Okay. Yes. We will later look at a role play here where you also will try to see a demonstration of survivor who was below, as you just explained. And yeah. Okay, let's go into some of the grounding exercises that is mentioned in the manual. Why do we do grounding exercises? It's a tool to handle very strong emotions of fear and flashbacks, and it brings the person back to reconnect both with the time element in the present and to the here. Where am I now? It helps the survivor to connect with her body and reassert personal control and to connect to the safe room in which she is now. Grounding is one way to reduce reactions or symptoms of anxiety or panic that threatens to overwhelm a person, because we don't want to re-traumatize the survivors to make them overwhelmed again. So as I've said, we have 5 foci. We ask what is happening in your body, in your feelings, in your breathing, in your thoughts, and in your heart. These are the 5 most important focuses we can have. So remember to invite the survivors to participate in a grounding exercise. Let it be an open invitation. If she does not feel ready to participate in an exercise, then you should respect her wish. I think we should practice what we preach. Nora talked about human rights and respect, and we also have to respect this in the session that we run. Sometimes I say to both children and females who have been exposed to rape or sexual abuse that I know, and especially I say this to children, I know that you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to remember it, you don't want to be reminded of anything that's similar. And I want to show you that I respect your borders. I don't want to be a new invasion and disrespect you. But I also know that you sometimes can't help it, that you are reminded of when you don't want to think about it, and you are scared again. And I also want you to know that I am willing to, and I am capable to listen to whatever you tell me. So I will not be someone who is invading you, but I will neither be someone who is failing you and failing to help. You see that they need sometimes to hear this double message, because you sometimes feel you end up in a position that it's wrong whatever I do. If I ask, I'm a new invasion, and if I don't ask, I'm a new failure, or a person who doesn't have the courage to ask and to be there for them. Please tell me if this was clear or if I messed it up. Was this clear? Can you write some comments on your... did it give meaning? Hmm? Use some minutes to think whether this was meaningful, and if you have time for questions, if you have any questions. Okay. We are gonna look at the video, and I want you, before you start looking at it, to see. Notice the body language of the survivor in this role play. Look at the energy level, and also what's the style of the helper, and whether you think she was respectful, whether you think it was important that she had regulated herself, that she was calm, able to wait. So here is one example of grounding exercises when the survivor was underactive. I have I try to ask the question about whether this can be made with many persons in the same time. Yes, we do it in groups with survivors, and for training purposes, we do it also in groups of helpers, up till 20 persons in the room. That's okay. And as I said, I do it with trauma survivors that have major traumatic disorders, and this can help. It's the exercise that is called reorienting to the present, and you should do it as slow as as the helper in the film did it. And name 3 things you see. You use your vision. 3 things you hear, and 3 things you can touch, and then scan your body and notice your stand of mind. And in the role play, we saw that she recognized suddenly things in the room that she hadn't observed before. So this is one grounding exercise, especially with numb people. Another grounding exercise that we will give as an example is when a survivor is above the window of tolerance, is in a hyperactivated state, or what we call the fight and flight modus. So the reorientation is to regulate up. This is to regulate down. So if you please follow my voice now and try it on yourself. How do you experience it? Notice how you sit on your chair and feel that your both feet are touching the ground. Stamp your left foot into the ground, then your right foot. Do it slowly. Left, right, left, right. Do this several times so you really get the connection and the feeling under your feet. Then focus your attention on your thighs and on your buttock that is in contact with the seat of your chair. The support you get from the chair. Notice if your legs and buttocks now feel more present or less present than when you started focusing upon the legs. Now move your focus to your spine. Feel your spine as your midline and slowly lengthen your spine and notice if it affects your breathing. Then move your focus of attention to your hands and arms. Put your hands together. Do it in a way that feels comfortable for you. Push your hands together and feel your strength and feel the temperature in your hands. Repeat and release and pause. Pause. And then push your hands together again. Release and rest your arms. Now move your focus to your eyes. Look around you in the room. Find something that tells you that you are here. Remind yourself that you are here, you are now, and you are safe. Notice that how this exercise affects your breathing, your presence, and your mood, and also your strength. Do you notice any difference in your body before and after doing this grounding exercise? Okay. Please write it in the chat. Helpful. Thank you. There is a more holistic sense of presence of my body and even my muscles. Comfortable. Thank you. I myself, I don't know where it stands here, but I myself also would recommend the even more thorough grounding exercise that is on page 153, which is called Release Muscular Tension Exercise. I find that for some it is more easy to follow because they both strengthen and then they release. So they got the connection with the part of the body that we put the attention to more easily. It's important to do this to practice these exercises over and over and over again, even when you not need it, even in situations where you not need it, because then they will come automatic when needed. So we do it as an exercise, even if people are not overactivated or underactivated, but just in order for them to have the tools whenever they need them. Yeah, then she can use it, for instance, when she's stressed or when she's experiencing flashbacks, that she can come back to here and now. When you do exercises in group, you will notice that each person is different. Yeah. It's similar to meditation exercise, is it not? Yes, it's part of a meditation exercise. It's different kind of meditation. So then you also focus upon your breathing, and that your thoughts should just be like clouds passing by, that you shouldn't stop any thoughts to come, but you should let them come and go again. It's my experience with meditation. As I said, each person is different, and an exercise that are effective for one survivor will not be necessarily be effective for all. But this on page 153, I have especially used with youth. Also, a group of youth experiencing a big massacre in Norway. They all seem to prefer this muscular release tension. It's like releasing negative power. Yes, you can say that. And one that I usually use mostly in individual sessions is this creating a safe place. I have also used it in groups. I remember working with a Somali boy who was always walking around in Oslo in the streets during nights. He didn't dare to sleep when it was silent, so he slept during day and walked from gas station to gas station during night. And we did this exercise with him to create a safe place, to remember a safe place and how it was to be there. And then he suddenly remembered sitting in the back of his father's car, stroking the little dog that they had, and the smell of the dog, and opening the window and feeling the air. And when he could imagine this being in this situation in the car, he felt his heart was beating more slowly, his breathing was more slowly, and he could be more calm. I remember also another boy who had seen his mother being killed in front of him. He was from a Christian minority in his village, and when we did this creating a safe place for him, it was the church where he had belonged, and he could hear the sound from the church, he could see the pictures in the church, and that helped him calm down and helped him actually help his nightmares. So he used it during night if he woke up from a nightmare, then he went to his safe place. So the exercise is like follows. Make yourself comfortable with your feet on the ground. Feel and relax your body, your head. Feel the balance. Also your face. Recognize whether there is tension in your jaws or in your forehead. Your arms. Your spine. Your stomach. Your buttock. Your thighs and your legs. You can choose whether you want to close your eyes or keep them open during this exercise. But listen carefully to my voice. Think of a place in which in the past you were calm, confident, and safe. It may be outdoors at home or somewhere else. It can be a place to which you have been once or many times, which you saw in a film or heard about. Or it can even be a place that you imagine. You can be there by yourself or imagine there is someone you know and you prefer with you. This can be a private, unknown to others place, somewhere that no one can find without your permission. Or you can decide to share it with others. Perhaps many places comes to your mind. That's okay, just pick one. Imagine this place. Imagine that you are there. Take time to absorb it in detail, its color, its shapes, the smells that are there, the sounds that are there. If you're outdoor, imagine the sunshine, the wind, and the temperature. Perhaps you will take off your shoes and feel the sand under your feet or the grass. Notice how it feels to stand, sit or lie there, and how your skin and your body feel in contact with this place. How does your body feel when everyone is safe and everything is fine? In your safe place, you can see, you can hear, you can smell, and you can feel exactly what you need to feel safe. You can go to this place whenever you want and as often as you want. Just thinking about it will cause you to feel calmer and more confident. Remain there for 5 more seconds. Then prepare to return to this room. Open your eyes and perhaps take a good stretch and do what you need to do to return to present time. I remember having a girl that had been sexually abused for many, many years. In the beginning, the only safe place she could imagine was my office. So she noticed the green sofa, the red walls, the lamps, everything in the room, and she used it when she came home to imagine that she was in my office. Then later she found that a memory from her childhood, sitting underneath the kitchen table in her grandmother's house, also was a good memory where she felt protected and safe. Ja, nå det egentlig ikke mer. Yeah. What did you experience during this exercise of safe place? Can you put some comments on the chat? Yes. Did you find a safe place from your own memory or from something you have read or a film, from cartoon movies? Can you say an example of that? I used this technique before to create a safe place from cartoon movies. On a regular basis, I do this when I'm overwhelmed with stressful, urgent tasks and schedule. It puts a smile on my face and regulates my breathing, and I do focus more. The Tom and Jerry cartoon, yes. I think I use different things. I have a place near a lake, and where I've been every summer since I was a child. So whenever I'm a bit scared, I imagine being there, and there are other people there, but they are a bit distant, so I can just hear the voices and the laughter, and I know they are there, and I can be by myself. And what I also do is, when I am in the airplane and I get a bit scared, I start singing songs I learned when I was a child, and to calm myself down. So we all have somehow favorite strategies that helps us calm down. But this imagining a safe place is a very good exercise for most of us. I would like you to think through this session, the definition of stabilization, the difference between macro stabilization and micro stabilization, the windows of tolerance, the recognizing in whether your survivor is hypo-aroused or hyper-aroused, and ways to regulate down, ways to regulate up, and think through whether you have some last questions before we end this session. I remember the happy ending of any action movie heroes. Yes, that's good. Because when we get scared and when we have nightmares, it's like movie that ends when we are most stressed. So we have to also think through the ending of a story. When did you know that this was over? When did you know that the rape that you survived? I met a couple once where they had been on vacation in a camping wagon, and during night it was a stranger intruding into the wagon. He hurt the man with his knife and almost cut his throat, and he made him being immobilized. I don't really remember how. And then he raped the girl. So the man was watching the girl being raped, and the girl was being raped and anxious about her husband that she saw lying immobilized, and she was afraid that he was dying. So one of the things that we had to do was to talk through their both experiences, their thoughts, their feelings, their bodily sensations. But I also had to ask many times, when was the moment of relief? When did you know that this was over? That you really would survive, both of you? And the husband very easily found his moment of relief. He said, well, when the ambulance came and the police came, I knew he would be safe. So then I could take a deep breath. But the wife didn't remember. And she said, I don't know if I have a moment of relief. And then she came back to the next session and said, now I remember. It was the next day when I went to my sister's house, and her little dog came towards me and jumped in my lap. And it was like for him, I was the same. I hadn't changed. And I remember that as a moment of relief. In the next session, you will talk about butterfly woman, the metaphor that we used when we have practiced this manual, that some of you will find useful. Perhaps you will need to change the story so it's more according to your culture, as it has been done in different countries. But we have used it also here. It was actually developed in Congo, but we have also used it here in Norway with people from different countries, different ethnic groups, and they have found it useful even if the context is somehow African. Any last questions before we say goodbye to each other and you continue your celebration, perhaps? Yeah, perhaps it's risky because they cannot find it, but they might find the moment where they knew that I will survive this time. It's over for this time. Moment of relief is perhaps too big word, but is there a moment when you knew that this episode stopped? So I'm looking forward to hear whether you find that you can use the window of tolerance with your survivors. Is it a helpful tool? And do you find other stabilization techniques helpful? So, as I said, thank you for listening to me. We all know that you do such a difficult and hard work during difficult circumstances, but so important work.